to LA Legal. I'm Liana. I am joined by Ron and Nick, and today we'll be discussing Jonbenét Ramsey. So, in my opinion, this is one of my favorite true crime cases. Not in like a weird, creepy way, but there's just so much happening here that deviates from the norm. So I'm super excited to talk about this. I do want to hear what you guys have to say and your thoughts. And I think everyone watching and listening is familiar enough with this where we don't sort of have to go through the facts. And I think we can just jump into the meat and gravy of this thing. So initial thoughts about the case, about any feelings about who you think may have done it, and then we can sort of talk about.
Well, I feel like it might be helpful to go over the basic facts just in case.
Just in case. Go ahead. Take it.
Okay, so let's see. So the Ramsey family is like a family of like 5 in Boulder, Colorado. Jonbenét was like the star little girl who was a beauty pageant queen. And then at the age of 6, she was found brutally murdered in their basement. That's a pretty good summary, right?
Yeah.
Right, and this happened in
96.
96. So me being, I'm going to take a leap of faith, guys, that I'm probably the only person who was growing up around then. I remember.
You're good. Yeah.
I remember. I would have been in 96. I was a junior in high school, so I remember it hitting national news, and now we're talking about it still, right? Mm-hmm. So it's 25 whatever years later. And now the Jonbenét Ramsey story, this I don't want to say myth, but this it really has implanted itself in American culture and American true crime. Now that true crime is such a thing, my wife cannot. She needs to watch something about murder every day. Yeah, you're nodding your head. She's so. But now
I'm the biggest junkie.
But I feel like that's one of the one of the real ones where it took national attention, right? The just her presence, learning about the family, learning about her, learning about her picture. Like you'll never forget her picture. Like she's all like her hair is just this huge, enormous hair. It's something that's just embedded in your psyche, is just remembering all the time, and for it to still be talked about and debated. That's true, relevant, and also the idea of how it's hit popular culture. There was a documentary on, I believe it was Netflix, which I saw because my wife likes watching anything having to do with murder. But it reminded me, like, oh my God, that's still an unsolved mystery. This poor lady, and all these theories that came in. And just so that I get it out, the documentary implied that the little brother, in a fit of rage.
That's where I am. Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Okay.
So
you can. Somebody's got to.
She dies at the end. So that in a fit of rage hits her with the pineapple. Or
is it a pineapple?
Yeah.
Baseball?
No, it was a flashlight.
A flashlight.
They were fighting over pineapple.
Over the pineapple,
yeah.
and that the parents didn't know what to do, and they covered it up by doing this elaborate, letter. The producer's going to kill me for hitting the mic again. Doing this elaborate this elaborate letter that is very, very long, and I read it. The one time or two times I've read it, it was very convoluted. Mm-hmm. But so that's the theory that was implied, or maybe not implied. That was put forth in the documentary. But
that's actually why I printed the letter. Is because I think there's just so much here, and this is just one of those pieces of evidence to me that is so out of the norm. It's just not something you see. It's not really something that makes any kind of logical sense. And so that's what I really wanted to talk to you guys about. So that's what that is.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought a printed version, because you hear a lot of discussion about like matching handwriting samples. Yeah. But when I read this printed version where you don't see the handwriting, I start thinking like, well, why wouldn't you try to match the writing style? Yeah. Like screw the handwriting. They could have forged that, or just changed it. But you can't really change the way you write. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they've put much time into that, though.
And well, there was the other thing is that they asked for the DNA evidence to be investigated, and the whoever signs off on the prosecutor didn't want to do it because the prosecutor thought that there wasn't enough evidence. And like looking back now, like DNA evidence exonerate so many people. You really, and again, 25 years ago, it wasn't as trusted as it is today. So it is, it's, at the end of the day, the 6-year-old little girl was strangled and hit. Maybe, I don't know, like the implications, right? That, well, just think about it, right? The implication that she died accidentally in a fit of rage from the brother, from the hit to the head, means that someone had to go and pretend and strangle her to cover it up.
And it had to be one of her
but
parents.
She was alive. She was, so based on the autopsy is that she wasn't, I mean, it was trauma to her head, right? She had a broken skull, but I guess when they do the autopsy, they can tell that she was still alive. So she, there was, to me, no sort of sense of, okay, let's try to save her. It was like, okay, we messed up. So let's kind of cover this up. But it sounds like we're kind of going down this road of like the parents were involved to a certain extent. So here's why I'm on board with that theory, because so alternate theories have come up, right? It was some crazy pedophile. She was in the public eye, and it was this neighbor, that neighbor, whatever. And to a certain extent, I can follow that road. I'm like, okay, I can get on board. All right. But it's this letter that doesn't make sense. And here's why. Because they were able to confirm that the letter was written from inside the home. So it was written by a pen that belonged to Patsy Ramsey, the mother. It was from a notebook or stack of papers that came from inside the home. And there was, and this was the second draft, okay? So who in their right mind, first of all, writes a letter? This is typed up. So I'm talking like handwritten. This thing is like 3 pages. Who comes in to commit a crime when everyone is at home and spends like not just one draft, but second draft, and drafts like a 3-page ransom letter from inside the house? Right? If you're I mean, I'm not a criminal, I don't know, but I would assume if I was going to go in to commit a crime, I'd be in and out, not just standing there over like someone's desk and drafting ransom letters.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
I completely agree with you. Another piece of evidence that I read actually just this morning is that so the brother was, I think, 10 years old and Jonbenét was 6. It's the same age differential as me and my little sister, actually. Not that I'm getting any ideas or whatever I did back then. But those are 2 ages where, siblings constantly fight. And supposedly this brother did have a history of hitting her with blunt objects, including a golf club 1 week before, which was actually gave her a serious injury and was noted because she was in the media and stuff. But basically, there was a pattern of the brother hitting her, even though lots of brothers hit their sisters. But
yeah, so this letter starts off with, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. What?
straight out of a movie.
The French are coming to get your kid.
Yeah.
I mean,
that are writing in perfect English.
Yeah, writing in perfect English. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. So now it's like a political sort of thing.
They should look back at what sort of news was going on in the world with foreign I don't know, agencies or something at the time that he got this idea of writing that from.
And then you will withdraw $118,000 from your bank account, which this is another very important point, is that it's a very odd number, not 100,000, not 200, not 150, but 118, which is the exact bonus amount that he got that year, he being the father, Mr. Ramsey. So I mean maybe
the foreign faction had access to his company's tax returns or something and knew how much he just made.
But even
I don't know.
so, my understanding is that this family was very, very wealthy. They've got millions of dollars. So if you're foreign, you're gonna come and ask him for $100,000. I mean, it was a lot of money back then, I guess, but.
Right, and we probably should also talk about Boulder, Colorado, which was always brought up during this documentary that I just saw, and it still is. It's a very quiet town. Like not a lot happens there. It's not like LA here.
It's beautiful. I love it there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very quiet town. Not a lot happens. So the other thing is that the people that were supposed to prosecute, investigate things were just wholly unprepared.
Yeah.
For the level of media attention and details that they should have brought in, either a sister agency or a national agency, to really do it, so that mistakes that are now being pointed out, right, and Monday back quarterbacking, is this is one of the things where, like, well, when you read these things, like, well, why wasn't this glaring, and why didn't you act on this immediately? Except, you know, it just kept going.
A police department that probably spends most of its time like breaking up parties at UC or at CU Boulder and whatever, and doing DUI cases and stuff. Yeah,
they don't have.
But then again,
crimes.
it's like they don't have violent crime. So when you see something like this is relatively elaborate, right? You have a missing child. You have a crazy ransom note from like another country. Do you not?
Allegedly another country.
Allegedly. I don't want to laugh, but we don't have any background in law enforcement, but wouldn't your initial thought be, wow, we may potentially be in over our heads, right? Let's bring in the FBI. Let's bring in, like you said, a sister.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like even any reference to a foreign faction probably should involve the FBI or the CIA or something.
Right. And so none of that happened. So any sort of final thoughts on this before we kind of move on to on the note?
Yeah, I mean, the note is an absolute. Everything was so bizarre, but the note is really just. I don't know why the parents weren't like immediately put on. Wait a minute.
I just think that the amount of detail in this note, like the first 100K will be in $100 bills, and remaining 18 is in 20. Like, who writes like this?
Movie characters. I read this note and it sounds like it's taken from a movie. Yeah.
Exactly. It's almost like it's laughable at how sort of
I think the other thing is you can also find this is something you would write under stress, right? Like,
exactly.
I need to make up a note, and what do I do? And the first thing you think of, like, well, think of money, and then like, well, we have to make it like somewhat longer. Like, okay, we'll break it up somehow. It just seems like the decisions that were made under a lot of stress, but yet, you know, you needed two.
And there's also a lot of back and forth between listen to us carefully and then I will. So it's almost like, does this person not know? Is it a we? Is it an I? Are you a foreign faction? Are you an individual?
You need to have a consistent first person.
And there isn't. So, right. And so this whole thing to me is just so bizarre. And I agree. I think it is consistent with someone, whoever it is, but you know, someone who's trying to very quickly cover up their tracks. And did a very poor job in an attempt to look very legitimate, I think.
I have a question for Ron. Ron, at the time, was there like a common public sentiment about who did it or how it went down or something that's changed since then?
I think everybody immediately thought it was, this is my impression, right? Mm-hmm. It was either an intruder or the parents who put this child through a very rigorous, right? It takes a lot of care, but also a certain amount of discipline to change or to mold, right, a 4 or 5 year old little girl into a smiling mannequin for beauty pageants. And I think there was also this sense of like maybe the parents went too far, that maybe Jonbenét had told her mom something that just the mom or dad didn't agree with, in the same dynamic of mom and, not mom child, but mom, you're a beauty pageant contestant, and that it went too far and they got frustrated with her, not listening to her, and that maybe that tipped the line and it just went too far, right? Because that is a huge thing, right? The reason again, she is emblazoned in my head forever is because of her picture as this totally dolled up Barbie in these pictures. And you're like, what kind of... A parent has to do so much with the child discipline-wise and a concentrated effort, because 5-year-old girls, 6-year-old girls don't go like, I want to do this. Like it takes. There was a reality show on this.
Right.
Oh my God, I can't have to. Like the idea of having somebody just, the parent has to impose so much discipline and have such a tight leash for that for that end product from a 5-year-old that I think a lot of people were suspecting, like maybe the mom just flipped out, right? Like 'cause
Right.
it's a rubber band
If
waiting
any
to snap.
parent could pull this off, it'd be a beauty pageant parent.
Right, and a beauty pageant parent has to have, like, there's just, it's a rubber band waiting to snap, in my opinion. Either the child going, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to, go do something else, or the parent flipping out, I'm tired of telling you the same thing over and over again, and it just taking it a step too far. That was my memory of it.
I think the second is more probable because, I mean, at 4 or 5, I don't think you understand enough to say I'm not really interested in doing it. I could be wrong, but I don't think a 5-year-old would say I don't want to do this anymore. In my mind, I've always kind of thought like they were trying to discipline her to do something. Maybe it's learn dance moves, or because they have talent shows, I think, during these pageants, or put on a dress or whatever, and they maybe hit her. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. But hitting her with a flashlight or a baseball or whatnot, that is just taking it so extreme, making it so extreme.
So no mention of the pineapple eating brother back then.
No, not at all. And thinking about, because the idea, right? People were not woke at any level in the 90s, and the idea that you would empathize with the experience of a brother who was in the shadow of this person. An older brother who's in the shadow of this person, maybe just having their own feelings and lashing out, is something that I don't think we had the bandwidth for at that time. Because that's complex, right?
Right.
That's a complex thing. Like to be like, well, somebody that is jealous of the parents putting too much attention on one person. Well, yeah, if my younger, I don't have any siblings, but if my younger sibling was having any type of augmented attention at even at a local level, just the town, a small town of Boulder, or nationally in that little, and then I'm not getting any, especially the attention of my parents, even if it's negative tension from the parents, you lash out. Things are going to lash out, and those are very complex things to think about. That people in the 90s, just weren't, we were just coming out of the riots then, right? Like in '93. And dealing with that whole thing, like the idea of making this more complex is just not something I think either the national media or the audience was really willing to do. It's like it was either intruder or the parent, right? It couldn't be anything else. Any complexity would have been.
You have, like I said, you have the ransom note, and then there was because they ultimately found her body in the basement, and there was a broken window, right? So it just initially, it's like, okay, intruder. Why would it be the parents, right? And I agree. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. So looking back and kind of dissecting everyone's behavior and all the things that they did that day, now to us, true crime junkies, but also people who, it makes more sense to kind of buckle down and say, hey, something's not right here. But as we talked about, you have a potentially inexperienced law enforcement agency, sort of all of these weird, bizarre facts and things that are coming up that I think it just...
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about, the complex emotional, psychological things associated with the thought of like a brother being jealous and taking that up with violence. But I think it's most likely that, little siblings, they get jealous and they fight, and maybe he just grabbed something and accidentally killed a fragile 6-year-old skull. It probably wouldn't take that much strength. Might have been an accident. Now the parents come downstairs and they say, oh shit, well, what do we do now?
Right.
He didn't necessarily have to do it out of like a malicious intent. But.
Right, but it's not exactly how a mature adult or set of adults, I think, react in a situation like that, right? I mean, again, you have 2 kids. I assume they fight. They're 2 little boys. If one of them smacks the other one, and like, God forbid, it escalates. Is your first? For me, it's always interesting to get into the mindset of these people, because it's just, how do you go from A to Z so quickly? And that was my fascination with
Lacey Peterson.
Yes, but no.
The pool.
The pool, in Florida. Like how?
What was her name? We just talked about
Casey Anthony.
Yeah, there you go.
Casey Anthony. How does an accident happen? And as a parent, your response to that is, okay, I'm going to stage a crime scene.
Well, to that, the reaction of the parent, right? When they interviewed these parents at the time, I remember going like, why aren't these people like just devastated, right? Like they're not acting devastated.
Oh, were they not? I haven't really
Oh,
seen the videos.
no, they
Yeah.
were like they were very. It was very. I don't want to say polished, but it lacked emotion to me. Like just devastated. Like, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever had the unfortunate to be really devastated over a loss. Like you can't hide it. You can't like
you don't put on
you can't varnish it. Like you can try to be like, I'm gonna try to be strong for my you know, the memory of my but like you lose it, right? And that never was shown when they were interviewing them, and I'm like, something is off.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is that
I didn't realize that.
When all of this happened, right? So the ransom note says don't call 911. They call 911 at some point. And then a police officer shows up, and the first thing that Patsy, the mom, does is call all of her friends from the neighborhood and bring them in. So to me, that was actually very strange because, number one, you have an active crime scene at your home, right? So now you're going to bring in your friends and a bunch of people. And I think that's where things went really south, because there's a bunch of people in the home that don't belong there. They're probably moving things around. There's, you know, DNA everywhere, right? Because they're touching things, there's moving things. But is your initial thought really to bring in your friends in the neighborhood? It's not to sit with your husband and try to figure out what you're going to do, because number one, your child's missing. Number two, these people say they're going to call you between 8 and 10. Do you not just sit there anxiously and try to figure out, okay, we'll pay the money? You know what I mean? There's just so much that to me...
The answer, of course, is no.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are those, you know, sort of segments of society where the moms that, like, wine and brunch together only are really, like, closer to each other at that point in their life than really anyone else. I don't know. I look at it from afar, and I think, like, I could see that. I've seen those sorts of, like, mom communities where I could see that. Even though, no, of course, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense. And then another thing that was in the report of the officer who first arrived at the scene was that throughout the entire time, the parents didn't speak to each other at all. I think that's strange as well. You know, when you're experiencing this kind of a tragedy, do you not find comfort in one another? Do you not... I mean, I don't know, right? Like, you can never judge someone unless you walk a mile in their shoes, I suppose. But what are your initial thoughts? You know, you're married, you have kids. Like, put yourself in this kind of situation. What in your mind do you think would be how
you're interacting either in a positive way or in a negative way, but you're reacting. So
Yeah.
it could either be like, this is your fault, fighting, and like everyone's annoyed at you guys fighting because you're just trying to figure it out and lash and do something. Or you're like sitting there and like, this is what we remember, and like there's a lot of nodding and agreeing and like, yeah, that's what happened. No, that's not, like trying to help each other remember something. But the idea of just like sitting apart and not saying anything,
it's strange.
It's strange, and you know, it's just you got to go with your gut, right? Like, yeah, Nick was reacting to what I was saying about when they were interviewed. It almost seemed when they were being interviewed, because it was televised, when they were interviewed, it almost seemed like they were more bothered at being accused than, hey, my daughter's dead and was murdered, and you guys, like, we should stop talking to me, go find this person. Mm-hmm. It really felt like they were just insulted, being like, even the insinuation that they did it. It was quite I still remember.
And if I'm a detective, like, that rings alarm bells in my head. Like, if
right,
the way the accused and loved ones like react in a public light, I think just says a lot about
that's
what just
actually
happened.
how O.J. Simpson actually became a person of interest, was because of his
Got
initial
that call in Colorado or whatever. He was in Colorado for
Florida or
now
something.
we're delving into how this relates to now, about how people go, if this was not the daughter of a rich white person, it would not be getting the attention that it got then, because little kids of color have and none of this happens. But it's news because this is the theory, okay, that it's a little, it's a little rich white girl who got murdered in a very quiet white neighborhood, and oh my God, this should be news, whereas kids of color are killed every day, and that is not news, right? And that's a different conversation, but it is a conversation that we're still having.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we should be having it, forever.
And
I know
it's
most
still,
recently that
it's still
camping
how it is.
couple,
that
camping couple that died.
Oh, right.
Or the girl died.
The girl died, around the same time
seven
as
Native girls who go missing from Native reservations like every year that don't get
there was it was around the time where, what's that case that Gabby Petito around
That's
the same
it, yeah,
time.
yeah, her.
I think that was.
know your
I
murders.
do.
Well, we talk about this stuff every week.
But we also do talk about it. But no, there was a black girl, I believe, who had gone missing around the same time, and Gabby Petito, as we all know, was everywhere, still is, and the only reason this poor woman is even spoken about is because people like yourself who bring it up. It's just not something that gets televised or any kind of attention. So maybe we'll do a podcast on that. That's actually very interesting.
Yeah.
But with that said, back to this really quickly. To kind of go back to the parents' behavior, right? So the mom. So we're talking about a very rich white family. You know, their daughter is a pageant. They just live. They're just sort of that picture perfect family, right? So the mom claims that they had just returned from a Christmas party. The kids went to bed. They went to bed. But the following morning, when the police officers arrived after she made the 911 call, her face was fully made up. She had makeup on. She was wearing the clothes from the night before.
As if she didn't get any sleep.
As if, no, her story was, well, we were about to board our private plane and go on vacation, so I just put on the first thing that this truly is what she says in the transcript when she's questioned by police officers. So to me, that rung a bell, because someone like that, again, I don't know them, but somebody like herself is not going to put on clothes from yesterday's Christmas party. That's weird to go on a plane, number one.
No way.
Number two, from what she said is that they went to bed, like, do you sleep with the full face of makeup and wake up completely fine? I mean, none of it added up to me. These people don't strike me as the type of folks who acted in accordance to what they actually said they did,
right.
You know? And so that tells me that perhaps she never went to sleep at night.
Right.
And so...
Or she's a vampire.
Or she's a vampire. But if she never went to sleep, then my question is, what is your involvement with this? Because this happened in the early morning hours, day after Christmas.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's like trace the alternative pineapple brother theory, which I believe goes.
You really hung up on this pineapple.
I like it. It's a good one. It goes like that night after the Christmas party. The mom made the son a bowl of pineapple and milk or whatever, and that's like what he liked. And then Jonbenét came downstairs, wanted some, and by the way, there was pineapple found in her stomach. And then they fought over the pineapple, and allegedly the brother would have hit her in the head with a flashlight. Yeah. So under that theory, the parents would spend the whole rest of the night concocting a fake note with a fake murderer, and like we said earlier, one of them would have to strangle their own daughter to make it look like that.
Right. Which...
Okay. And who knows what the brother remembers if that's the case, right? Because at 10, you could just that type of trauma, you can just as a coping mechanism make up an alternate for that reality.
There are videos of his interrogation, and they point to the photo of a bowl of pineapple that they were eating, and he like can't even bring out the words pineapple when they ask him what it is.
I mean, you were talking about 9-year-olds. So another thing that I found interesting was the fact that there was a broken window in the basement, which is where the body was ultimately found, right? And so when questioned about it, again, it looks like an intruder came in, but the family said that window had been broken since the summer, so since July, August. Again, you guys are rich. You've got all the money in the world. You're not going to fix a window that leads straight into your house and you have 2 little kids at home?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
It's I think they were given the benefit of the doubt by people that were unexperienced, and also they probably have a lot of influence in that area because of they had private, and the idea of charging prominent people in a small town is probably not something that the people that were supposed to be prosecuting were able to stomach, and it's really a tragedy. And again, we're talking about the murder of a little girl. Who, for many reasons, was very, very famous in and of herself, but has elevated to this legendary status. And it's there's a lot of themes that come up, right? Why are we talking? At the time and today, we talk about white females that are murdered, but not colored females that are murdered. Nick brought up a very good point about people that are Native American. the tragedies that happen daily with disappearing women in Native America. But it's an opportunity for us to talk about that, and also what happened. Just there are double standards, and sometimes things aren't justice was not served, quote unquote, right? But at the end of the day, I would never want to be. If it is the parents, they probably suffered the most personally, even if they did, quote unquote, get away with it. So
the grand jury in Colorado actually indicted the parents, and then the prosecutor declined to prosecute. So that now leads to, is there a cover-up? Is there why 25 years later now
the
that
amount
DNA
of influence
is,
parents who have a private jet in Boulder, Colorado have over the DA has to be enormous.
Exactly. And is there still a cover-up 25 years later because nobody's willing to kind of go back and revisit this case? So I agree with you. At the end of the day, a little girl didn't get to see past the age of 6, and it's so unfortunate. And I think the reason we still talk about it is because it's so ingrained in our pop culture. Her brother recently sat down with Dr. Phil and gave an interview. So this thing, kind of like OJ, I think we said this in our, it's just every few years something comes up. There's a new documentary and kind of reminds us of.
Didn't OJ just release a book
and then
called
OJ,
If I Did It, I would have done it?
It's just every year these very notorious,
awesome.
unsolved.
But I didn't.
But I didn't. Oh, you should watch episode 2. I think we did on OJ together.
Yeah.
So that's why
fun.
that's all the OJ trivia. But any final thoughts as we wrap up?
If you're out there watching this, I'm sorry, I don't want to accuse you of something you didn't do. It seems like you might have.
You seem like a nice guy who likes pineapples and milk.
Yeah.
Is what we're getting at. Okay, well, that's about all the time that we have. Thank you guys for joining. As always, this is just a really interesting conversation to have. Stay tuned for many more to come. If you like what you saw and what you heard, please follow us on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.